Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Listen with Vobes. Hello there. Hope you're doing well on the 24th, yes it is, of February 2017. Nice to be with you. When my son and his girlfriend finally move out, around about March the 12th, that week possibly, the plan is to rebuild or to move the studios that I have. When I say studios, don't think of anything glamorous, but the master bedroom of the 2 up, 2 down house that I live, I want to split into 2 or possibly 3 areas which I can swivel the camera around, and these areas will be different sets, have different sets in them. So it'll be one studio with 3 different sets. And the idea is that I hope to have a Listen with Vobes set in which I can still read comments and record and read the books in a more comfortable setting, rather than all this clutter that has become the one studio that I have, which is the Vobe Show studio. And this studio will change, and it will go upstairs. And so, I just need to blow my hooter. I also meant to bring into the studio 2 books that arrived today. They're in the other room. So I'll probably talk about them on the Vobe Show, because one of them I don't know who sent it, and the other one I do know who sent it. But I forgot to bring them in the studio, which was rather stupid, because I've been faffing about making up my ginger and lemon drink. Anyway, so we will crack on. Right, well, we should be back now. Fingers crossed. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. The internet crashed. I just suddenly got notification you're offline. The modem was flashing, and it's one of those situations. Richard is aware of the situation. We'll return to his live. Yes, sorry about that. We should now be working. Let's, fingers crossed, should have given Eric a pay rise. That's very true. Good. Can you see me and hear me? If you can, just confirm by giving me a few thumbs up. We've got nine thumbs ups at the moment, or likes, or whatever they are. And if I suddenly see that go up, I know that you'll be there. Unplug something. Yes, there we go. Look at that. That's marvellous. I can have an actual sip of the drink. Many apologies. I've had issues like this, not generally during the live shows, but through other parts of the day. It's as if somebody somewhere has trodden on a wire and it's unplugged, but it's probably engineers in the road fiddling about. And we're back. Marvellous. There we go. Fantastic. Sorry about that. No idea why that happened, but hopefully it didn't. We've barely got started, so that's okay. I keep looking over there because that's where the monitor is. And there we go, look. And it tells me there, sorry about the microphone being in the way. I can't really get the mic. It tells me down here if I'm online. And of course, this is the thing that shows me that we're live, so to speak. Well, we better crack on before we lose the connection. Oh dear. Okay, marvellous. Yeah, it does look like everything is running normally. So here we go. I was going to do a roll call, but you know you're here, so we'll just crack straight on if that's all right. Let's hope that we have a nice clear reading day like we did yesterday, and not like the first day. So. Living year after year in Windlecombe, I have come by old habit to associate. So I've already lost it. I have come by old habit, not come by an old habit. I've come by old habit to associate with each month that passes its own characteristic changes and events. I think he means I have come by an old habit to associate each month that passes its own. It's going to be one of those days where I Either there's a word missing, or anyway, it's probably not important. February always stands in my mind for three great ebullitions of the year's life. I wish he would just write in just, simple English for me. Ebullitions. Is that a word? Is that anything? You can tell me. February stands in my mind for three great ebullitions of the year's life, equally wonderful in their several ways. The coming of the elm blossom, not something that we get to see these days because there are basically very rarely any elms. The earliest clamorous music from the lambing pens, and the first rich song of the awakening bees. Through my study window, all this week of warm, glittering, showery weather, I have watched the elm trees about the churchyard gradually lose their shape, clear-cut outline of winter, and dissolve into the misty softness of spring. Already the treetops are so dense that the blue sky can barely penetrate them. This change is not caused by the expanding leaf buds, but by the opening of the myriad blossoms, which come and go before the leaf. Their colour is a magnificent sombre purple. It is a shame. I just trying to think if I've ever seen elm come into blossom. Has anybody here seen elm come into the blossom? Lots of elms within 50 feet of where I live, says Bonnie. Oh, really? I thought they'd all been pretty much, gone. Are you talking about which elm or just elm? Put a comma in. I come. Oh, here we go. Lee says. I come by old habit. Oh, let me just go back and have a look at that. This is like a reading lesson to me. Living out a year in Wingercombe, I have come by old habit. Oh, I see what you mean. Not I've come by an old habit. Oh, yes, you see. I did think there probably wasn't. Anyway, whatever. I'm just delaying things, making sure that... yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Yes, I don't think I've ever seen that. Hove Park, says Bonnie. Lots of elms within 50 feet. Hove Park. Oh, lovely. And do you see elm flowers look like green ruffles? Well, he's saying they're purple. Myriad of blossoms which come and go. Their colour is magnificent sombre purple, but the whole tree stands up in the sunshine, clad in this glorious raiment from its bole to its highest twig, an imperial garment reminding you in more ways than one of ancient Rome and its Caesars. For there is little doubt that the elm is no British tree, but was brought to us by the Romans all those centuries ago with so many other good things. In the deep pockets of rich soil which have shifted down to the valleys, and in the shallower soil of our chalk hills, almost every species of forest tree makes generous growth. But perhaps nothing takes so kindly to Highland Sussex conditions as the elm. The village gardens are fringed with its beautiful, wide-spreading shapes, and in summer gridded over with its long blue shadows. But no tree stands within a distance of its own height from any dwelling. Hard experience has taught men that the elm is undesirable as a near neighbour. Of all the trees, it is the most comely, because it is never symmetrical, but it owes this picturesque trait to a habit intolerable in a close acquaintance. Not only does the elm cast its great branches to earth at all times, and without creak or groan of warning, but during the season of the equinoctial gales, you never know when the whole tree may not come toppling over in a moment, measuring its vast length on the ground with a sound like the impact of the heaviest wave that ever thundered against Beachy Head. It was so that the king of Windlecombe, the oldest and mightiest elm through it was so that it was so that the King of Windlecombe, the oldest and mightiest elm through half a country, came down one pitch black tempestuous night in September long ago. None of the children, nor many of the younger folk in the village, now remember the king, where he towered up beyond the east wall of the churchyard, and every sunset threw his vast shadow halfway up the coombe. But they are all familiar with the story of his downfall. A wild night it was. Every window shook in its frame. Every chimney was an organ pipe for the winds blowing. The sound of the rain on the roof and wall was like an incessant hail of musketry. Thatches were stripped off. The inn sign went clattering down the street. The gilt weather clock on the church tower took a list that it has kept to this day. No one dared go abroad that night, but families sat close at home, keeping shoulder to shoulder in timorous company and dreadfully wondering what it was like at sea. Had you need to speak, you must shout your words, so great was the din from the hurricane. All night it raged undiminished, and no one slept. Some even would not venture to bed, not knowing but the roof might be plucked off any moment as they lay, and let the drenching torrent in upon them. Then, as the first grey tinge of dawn blanched in the eastern sky, high above the voice of the storm came the tremendous booming note, as though the earth had split asunder. And with the light, people looked out and saw that the King of Windlecombe was down. Today, as I settle myself to work with the lattices tight closed to shut out the lure of the songful morning, there came a patter of earth upon the grass. At first I thought it was one of the martins' nests broken away from the eaves above, being stuffed too full of hay by interloping sparrows. But the sharp volley sounded again, and looking out, there on the path below, I beheld the old vicar in a wide-brimmed hat and tartan shawl. Let me just go back on some of the comments that here. There's an elm in Hove wreck. It's an example of only two known in the world. Yes, I think we made a... Is that... we made a video about that. The lovely Julia and I went and visited it when there was the dead one next to it, and the dead one now has been moved. I think it's been chopped down, hasn't it? If I remember rightly. There is a video on the Board Explorer about that very thing. The other one is in New Zealand. Oh, right, okay. Julia says that I had a patient and careful reading support volunteer in junior school who shaped how I process written words. I can't even remember what she looked like, but I love her to this day. Apropos of what was that? Justine Jones says, I hope that cuttings have been taken. Bonita says, some of the older books are very much more challenging because the sentence structures are different to nowadays. You're telling me. Try reading The Borrowers out loud. It's almost impossible. Oh, is it? I must get a copy of that. Lee Lawson says, Kipling wrote about the elm that drops a limb on the head of him that anyway trusts her shade. Oh, right. So they're famous for dropping their branches then. TICL is an app of collection. Obviously, actually, I've only got this on top chat, so for some reason I'm not getting all of the chat. Hang on a minute. There we go. That's better. No, that's the Preston Park. Oh, I see. That's oh yeah. Because I know that in Brighton, that's a sort of what you call it, protected zone, isn't it? They're trying to protect the elms in Brighton, but I don't think we've got any in Worthing, unfortunately. Yes, no, thanks. Yes, that's right, the Preston one. So where did you say? Hove Wreck or somewhere? Can't remember where you said. Oh, Hove Park. I don't know where Hove Park is. Hove Park. Anyway, probably in Sussex somewhere, probably near the coast, probably near Hove, actually. Anyway, he sees the vicar. "How now, old mole?" cried he, shaking his stout oak cudgel at me. "The sun shines, the west wind calls, all the brooks are laughing over their beds, yet there you hide in your burrow, grouting among dead words, warming up stale cold dreams a 12-month-old. Shame on you! Come out and let the air and sunbeams riddle your dusty fur. Come and lend me your eyes for a long morning. I've seen to Mrs. Dawes' rheumatics. I have done the school. Old Collop has had his bedside talk. I'm free for a ramble, and I want to go everywhere and tell of everything. Come this moment, or I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." With his jolly, wrinkled face turned upward, his long white beard wagging and his kind eyes steadily meeting mine, it was difficult to believe that he could see only the faintest shadow of all before him, that for years past he had lived and worked in a world of deepest dusk, wherein very noontide sun of summer was no more than a pale spot in never-ending gloom. I got my thick boots and was soon trudging down the hill with him towards the riverside woods and meadows, every yard of which had been familiar to him in his days of light. Arun was running high, with 3 spring tides yet to come. Much rain had fallen of late. It looked as though the floods would soon be upon us, unless the wind changed and drier, colder weather set in. We skirted the river bank with the wind whipping light ripples almost to our feet, and the sun making a broad path of gold along the waters. Beyond the river stretched green level pastures intersected by deep dikes, and beyond these again lay the misty blue sierra of wooden hills. The old parson stood easily forward, his face turned up to the sky. His step never faltered, but his stick hovered incessantly about the path as he went. "Hark to the wind in the trees," he said. "That's a new voice. The elms must be in full bloom. I can guess what they look like, and the sound is different in that clump of beeches there. The leaf buds must be getting along and green now. Only the ash and the oak keep their winter voice in February." Well, that's very interesting because the oak is just beginning to open and unfurl, and I saw some beech yesterday when I was out walking, just millimetres of unfurling. But the elms, it would have been lovely to have seen some elms in the hedgerows with their purple blossom, I have to say, in February. Thus it always was on our walks together. What he heard he told me of, and what I saw I gave him as well as I was able. "Listen," he said presently. "Do you hear that? That is the first chaffinch song of the year. And there is the great tit clashing his silver cymbals together, and the bullfinches blowing over the tops of their latchkeys, and a green woodpecker laughing. He never laughs in that grim, scornful way until the year is well on the wing." Then I, not to be behind him, I see grass, fresh, newish new growth pushing up everywhere. Young nettles too. They're coming up amongst the green old dead stems. But they cannot yet sting. Yes, they can, and badly. Stop a moment, Reverend. The salanders, is it salandines? The salandines are out, thick on the bank. You remember their shining yellow 5-rayed stars set in dark green leaves like the spade blades of Hamlet's diggers. Below on the bank, where it is too steep for anything else to grow, there are coltsfoot flowers. The drab earth glows with them. No leaves at all, just long, curved, scaly stems, each ending in a tuft of golden fleece. And then there is, I know, I can look back a dozen springs and see them all as well as you. But listen to that thrush. That is his honeymooning note, and the pair must be nesting not far away. I have found thrushes' nests in February many a time. See if you can find this one. Your singer has flown, and there goes the hen, out of the other side of the bush. If the nest is anywhere, it'll be here under this tangle of clematis. Yes, 2 eggs already. I wish you could see their clear greenish blue with the dapple marks on it. I guided his hand to the nest, and his fingers wandered lightly over it. Cold, said he. She will not begin to sit yet, perhaps never on this clutch. There is frost and snow ahead of us still, though all of us forget it, this weather, bird, beast, and man. The path led us into the hazelwood. Hazel below and overhead saw... I'll just read that again, but hang on, I'm just going to pause to see your comments. My comment was regarding your mention of reading lesson, Richard. Oh, yes. Oh, right. Thank you for that. Afternoon, says Cooper68. Afternoon. Tales of the Riverbank come to mind. Absolutely. Have you seen any ash yet? Says... I've seen plenty of ash, but not whole. No, they're still in their tight 3 bud. You know how ash is like 1 big bud and 2 either side, like arrowheads. They're still like that as far as I've seen. Oak before ash, only be a splash, says Lee Lawson. That description of kind eyes steadily holding my gaze, Julia was in love with. I was stung by a tiny nettle only the other day. I haven't seen... I'm just trying to think what I've seen on the floor, really. I suppose I have seen nettles. I guess I haven't really paid much attention to nettles because, you know, they're everywhere, aren't they? Ed Loud says that the Reverend Sight sounds just like my near-blind grandfather. Now I have enjoyed exploring England as much as I did with him. Often I would close my eyes and try to see what he could. Magic. To this day, if you drop me in a place dear to me, I know where I am by the smells and textures of the sounds. Thanks to the experience of a child. Well, that's yes. Now, how lovely is that? I wish I could do that. Anyway, where the devil was I? Something about a hazelwood, I think I was. Sorry, I've just lost myself again. The path led us into the hazelwood. Hazel below and overhead, soaring columns of beech. Oh, that's why I paused last time, because the sentence didn't make any sense, but I've got it now. The path led us into the hazelwood. Hazel below and overhead, soaring columns of beech, whose branches touched fingertips everywhere across the white-flecked blue of the sky. As we went along, the sound of our footsteps in the fallen leaves was like the sound of wading through water. I must read off to him what I saw about me, as though it were from a book. The hazel catkins were never so fine, I think, as they are this spring. The wood is full of them, like showers of gold-green rain falling. Whenever we brush against them, clouds of pollen drift off in the wind. It is the wind that makes the hazelnuts, which we gather by and by. What millions upon millions of spores, only to make a few bushels of nuts. I struck a single branch with my stick just now, and for yards ahead the sunshine was misty with the floating green dust. Then, here and here, on every branch. It's interesting that, because I've not actually witnessed that. That would be interesting to see the hazel catkins. Yes, I have seen the hazel catkins. But to do that pollen thing, we must give that a whirl. Yes, yes, I can see it all, said the vicar. There are little green buds, each with a torch of bright crimson at its tip, flaming in the sun. Why should they be so vividly coloured, if only to catch what the wind brings? Floating pollen, as blind as I. No, no, the hazelnut was made for the bees originally, for they depended upon it. Nature never uses bright colours unless to attract winged life. We came out of the wood on the south side. Stopping just within the shade of the last trees, we had a view over a chain of sunny, sheltered meadows that lay between the riverside willows and the first steep escarpment of the downs. Here the wind was only a song above our heads. Scarce a breath stirred where we leaned upon the gate in the sunshine. I must be at my living book again, yet knew not where to begin. So crowded was the page. March is still 3 weeks off, and yet hares are already as mad as can be. Over there, under the hangar, a mile away, I can see them racing and tumbling about together. There are more celandines and coltsfoot blossom everywhere. I can see daisies wherever I look, and there's a disk of dandelion by the gatepost, just where you stand. What a cloud of midges! Thousands are dancing in the air above our heads, and I can see their wings making a hazy streak of light all down the hedgerow, where the elders are in flourishing green leaf. Did you ever hear so many birds all singing the same time? And there goes an army of rooks and jackdaws overhead. What a din! The high yelping treble of the daws and the deep-voiced rooks singing bass to it. This is it is quite an eye-opener. This is 100 years ago, and he's describing February. We're in February, aren't we? With the blossom already coming out, and the daisies and the dandelions. I don't think I've seen any of those. The Reverend put his hand upon my arm to stop me. "I can hear something else," he said. "A dandelion, did you say? Then she will come straight for it." And as he spoke, I heard the old familiar sound too. It was a hive bee, tempted abroad by the glad spring sunlight. She came straight over the meadows. Passing all other blossoms by, she settled on the single flower half hidden in its whirl of ragged green leaves close beside us, and forthwith began to smother herself in its yellow pollen. "And there she goes again," said the old vicar, as the soft, rich sound mingled once more with the myriad other notes about us. "High up into the air, doesn't she, making ever a wide and wider circle, until she gets her first flying mark, and then, in the usual zigzag course, home to the hive. A bee-line. People always make the word stand for something absolutely straight and direct, but a true bee-line is the easiest way between 2 points, not necessarily the shortest. Take a bee-line, if folk only knew it, is just to fly through the calmest. To take a bee-line, if folk only knew it, is to fly through the calmest or most favourable airs, judge the quickest way between all the obstacles, dodge the ravenous tits and sparrows, and so get home safe and sound to the hive." Which makes perfect sense. Wych elm is rare now due to Dutch elm disease, says Bonnie, but still quite a few in Brighton and Hove, very ancient ones in the Royal Pavilion Gardens. I know there's some wych elm in the hedgerows as you go from the car park to the Kingly Vale, because when Julia and I were filming there, I noticed their leaves, and I was heavy into tree identification at that point, and I thought, this is elm, wych elm. And Julia says this is a beautiful description of ecology around him. He is very poetic with his words. It sounds like a warm winter in this book in the early age of spring of February. Well, this came out in 1911, so presumably this was maybe a year or so before then. This spring, the Artlets, that's the Shepherd's family, isn't it? The Artlets have built their lambing pens on the sunny slope of Windle Hill in full view of the village. When at threshing time last autumn the wagons toiled up the steep hillside with their shuddering loads of yellow straw, and the ricks were fashioned end to end in a curving line against the north, strangers wonder why a farmer should carry his bedding down material so far from its main centres of consumption, the stables and cowsheds. But the reason for the work is clear enough at last. Behind the solid rampart of straw, the lambing pens lie in a cosy shelter, and every day now sees them more populous. Day and night, as the month wends on, there arises from them a fuller and fuller melody. Alone, perhaps, of all other rural occupations, shepherding remains unaffected by the avalanche of machinery and chemistry which has descended upon agriculture. Here and there may be found a flock master who talks of shearing machines, but it is rare to find anything but the old hand clippers in use by the old-fashioned wandering gangs of shearers. Flocks are larger and so bring the modern shepherd more anxious care. But in all essential ways, his year's round of work is the same as in the time of old, when the shepherds watched their flocks by night near Bethlehem. For the first time in near upon 50 years, old Artlet has had no hand in the pen-making. Rheumatism, the lifelong foe of the shepherd, has got him by the heels at last, and if it turn out with him as with nearly all his kind, he will never again leave the chimney corner until he is carried thence and laid to sleep beside his long line of forebears up in the churchyard. But young George is as good a shepherd as any of his line, in this as in all other branches of the craft. Whenever you go among the neighbourhood sheep farms, you will hear tell of the amazing good luck of Windlecombe at lambing time. George Artlet views the matter from a different standpoint. We sat together in his cosy hut on the hillside towards 12 o'clock We sat together in his cosy hut on the hillside towards 12 o'clock of a gusty moonlit night. The coke fire burned in the little stove with a steady brightness, casting its red rays through the open door and far out into the resounding night. Overhead a lantern swung gently to and fro, rocking our shadows on the walls. From the lambing pens, hard by, there rose a ceaseless yammering chorus, and from the outer folds a confusion of tongues deeper still, mingled with the tolling of innumerable bells. George Artlet sat on the straw mattress in the corner, his knees drawn up to his chin. "Ah, luck," said he, a little scornfully, peering at me through the cloud of tobacco smoke, all from my own pipe, which hovered between us. "And how be it then as them as believes in luck get so unaccountable little of it? Gregory over at Rearsdown yonder wants so much as throw a hurdle on a Friday, and wears a bag of charm stuff round his neck, and would walk a mile sooner than go under a ladder. Well, how be it with 'em? Lambs dying every day, folks say, and yows too. Seven of them gone already. 'Twill be 13, as says 13. The unlucky number as 13, the unlucky number, and then 'twill stop. 'Tis Resdown's luck, says he. Ye can do nowt about it. And next year, all go on feeding short and poor, just as allers does, and putting them ewes to the ram too young, and lambing them homeyard again, where 'tis soggy and unhealthy jest, because 'tis near to bed. When a man does his night shepherding, swearing at the lads through windy, he may well look for bad luck." Sorry about the dreadful reading of that, but it is quite awkward. He rose and drew on his great blanket coat and pulled his sou'wester over his eyes. Then he took down the lantern from its hook, and together we plunged out into the buffering wind to make the round of the folds for the 6th time since my advent, although the night was but half over. The moon was already at the full. In its flood of pure white light, the lambing yard, with its surrounding folds, looked like some extensive fortification. So high and impregnable seemed the walls that hemmed it on every side. These walls were made of sheaves of straw, standing on end, shoulder to shoulder, of such girth and density that not a breath of the unruly wind could penetrate them. Within the lambing yard was floored a foot deep with the same straw, and on all sides were the pens, little separate bays, flanked and topped by hurdles covered in such like material. The whole place was crowded with ewes and lambs, the newest arrivals still in the pens with their mothers, the rest almost as snugly berthed out in the main way of the yard. Outside this elaborate stockade were 2 great folds, the one containing the ewes still to be reckoned with, the other thronged with those whose troubles were over happily, and with whom already the cries of and joys of motherhood were verging on the trite. Shepherd Arlett took no chances at any stage with his work. At the entrance to the lambing yard he carefully covered up the lantern with his coat, and thereafter allowed its light to fall only where he needed direct his scrutiny. "Nane of George's luck for me," he said. "There bain't no wolves in the hills nowadays, but sheep. They be just as much afeard of summut as 'twere born in 'em to dread. 'Tis in their blood, I reckons. Now look here, a naked light carried in the hand, and let sudden in upon them, see how it shudders and dancing and prancing around. Like as not, 'tis the wolves come a-leaping round the folds ages and ages back. So it bides in the blood with all the sheep, a sort of nature's bygone memory. Frighten one now, and you'll likely frighten all. Set 'em stampeding, and that means slipped lambs turned milk and trouble without end. Geoffrey's luck again. Gregory's luck even, not Geoffrey." It's going to pause to just have a quick look at your comments. Sounds like a warm winter. Yes, I listened to a fascinating talk, says Lee Lawson, on a Zoom call yesterday on plants. 5 daisies, 2 dandelions, 6 buttercups together produce enough nectar to feed a bee for 1 day. Don't mow your lawns. No, exactly. Well, plant a meadow is what you need to do. There are lots of young sapling elms evident in hedgerows, but they get above a certain height and the insect causing the elm disease goes for them. Yes, I think that's right, Linda. I have read that too, that they, you can't get them any taller under a certain thing, which is such a shame, isn't it? I don't mow my lawn in June or July. I let the clover flower and all the bees, says Turbo. We don't mow the grass, says Lee. Nigel says, I found the Met Office site that gives historical weather dating using Southampton as a reference for the maximum minimum temperatures. So here we go. 2009, 7.102, 2010, maximum minimum temperatures in centigrade, presumably, 7 degrees centigrade. 2010, 9 degrees centigrade, 8. Pretty much what it is at the moment. Well, we're quite warm today, aren't we? We must be about 13 or 14, I would hazard a guess. We were 13 yesterday when I was out with the sun shining. These are the average monthly temperatures. Oh, right. Oh, okay. So, it's difficult to gauge, isn't it, really, a year on in without, proper studying of the the thing, because the sun, there must have been more sunlight because the trees were coming out, presumably. What do I know? I know nothing. On these rounds, every pen in the yard was visited, and its denizens critically examined. Not a sheep of the huddled, vociferating crowd through which we threaded our difficult course, but had her share in George Artlett's swift roving glance. Here and there we came upon a new-born lamb, and then George took its 4 legs in one handful and carried it head downward through the throng to the nearest vacant pen, its frantic mother bleating her expostulation close in our rear. It's a shame they take them away from their mothers. Never quite understand why they do that. There were the feeding cages to fill with hay and mangold to be carried in and scattered amongst the crouching sheep. Sometimes there was a sickly lamb or ewe to doctor when we went trudging back to rifle the medicine chest in the hut, and rarely a weakling who would refuse its natural food but must be taken under George's coat, a silent, shivering, woolly atom, and restored to life by voice of the warmth, restored to life and voice by the warmth of our fire and the bottle. In how great a measure the luck of Windlesham or any sheep farm depends on the foresight and tender care of the shepherd was well brought home to me as, in the first ghostly light of morning, something like a crisis came to vary the monotonous round of our task. I had dozed off as I sat in my corner, and woke to find grey dawn picking out of the tops of the hills, and George away on his unending business. Presently, through the little window at my side, I saw him coming back over the rimy glass. Is it rimy or rimmy? His coat bulged out with an unusual burden. He set the lamb down on the straw by the fire. Limp and lifeless it looked, and past all aid. But George fell patiently to work, swabbing it, and as he worked he talked. "'Tis white eye again, and a fine yow, but unaccountable bad mother a be surely. Pearly night lost her lamb last season, and now again 'tis nearsome the matter with 'em. Won't ye suck? Won't ye suck? But's the little un away a do." Sorry, I just heard my phone. I thought we'd gone off air then. That and the could tits, not tits, tis. Terrible hard to put it, I were at last time to save 'em. And this, well, if it comes round, 'twill be a miracle. He stopped to fetch his breath, and then set more vigorously than ever. "Losh, I do believe, I'll do it. Better a score than a dead un's, and be all ready. Now, sharp with the bottle." But the wretched, mute morsel of woolliness was too weak to suck, and then George Artlett did what I'd never seen done before. "Well, well," he said confidently, "we must try through old-fangled way with 'em." He took a gulp of warm milk, and bringing the lamb's mouth to his own, tenderly fed it. Again and again this was done, until life began to flicker up, strong once more in the little creature's body. "But mind ye," said George, as presently he stood looking down on the resurrected lamb and regaling himself with its pitiful bleating, "no more o' White Eye. Off to Findon Fair goes with the draft sheep next May, sure as she's alive." So, going to be sold at Findon Fair. Well, we know where that is. That would be interesting. So that's where I'm going to stop, because we now come to March, and that's the end of that chapter, which is fascinating to hear about that. And interesting that he took a mouthful of the milk because it wouldn't suck on. I wonder how many farmers, shepherds, would do that now. Take a mouthful of the milk and feed the lamb with a bit of mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Gave up on mine. What do we got here? On the BBC weather, they said one German village has gone from -24 to 18 degrees centigrade in the last week. The greatest difference, 42 degrees on record between weeks. Wow. I often hear, watching somebody in Canada, he'll say it's -20, but I don't know whether he's talking centigrade or Fahrenheit. And then I don't even know, because Fahrenheit is something like 32 is freezing point, isn't it, in Fahrenheit? So is that really very cold, -20? Or is it very, very cold? I never quite understand. I found the website, Lee. Look after the reading. Keen to make my shady lawn into something better than a moss factory. Gave up on mine. Shingle now. Really enjoying it. I have seen it done with goatlings. Have you? Oh, feed in that. So you meant to have shingled lawn then with goatlings. Yes, we just put goatlings down on our lawn. It does all a difference. Another lovely reading. Sorry about the farmers. Patchu dumb the lambs. Patchu dumb the lambs into the AM stomach. Oh, it's gone. Thanks, Richard, for the reading as ever. I think Canada has degree centigrade. Ah, right. Okay. So -20 is bloody cold then, I would think. 20 degrees Fahrenheit is even colder. Oh, right. 29 degrees centigrade. Blimey. That is cold, isn't it? I don't know how they cope, really. I mean, you know, we go down to what? -3, 4, 5 on occasions. Rarely in this neck of the woods do we get it any colder than that, isn't it? It's very rare. You still go out, though. Anyway, so there we go. What a fascinating book, and what a beautiful way to describe the countryside. And I'm glad, Lee, you pushed me to keep going, and you're quite right to do that. And I was struggling at first, thinking, the first chapter was a bit of a weird chapter. Farmers put a tube down into the lamb's stomach, so that it doesn't go onto the longs. Says Sensible Paul. Yeah, I kind of know what you mean. Yeah, but I bet they don't, I mean, it would be seemed to be too, what would it be? Unhygienic. But I guess that's how they do it. I believe they were putting both lamb and the mum in the pen together, says Anne. Oh, right. Oh, okay. It just seemed, I know they had a hard way of doing things back then, probably unemotional. We should be colder. It's the Gulf Stream that keeps me warm, says. Well, I'm not complaining. I quite like the Gulf Stream. It's quite nice. Yes. Anyway, I can't remember what I was saying about the book, but I think it's interesting. I think the interesting thing is, although very little happens, the description of the world in his world and in then is so vivid to the senses, and with the vicar, I think that was very abundant, that we have lost a lot in this world of diversions and busyness, have we not? And that is something that I'm getting from the book, is just how much there is to see and appreciate in just a walk. And it's, it's actually making me think that one should look even harder when I'm walking on my, less of the walk and more of standing and staring and being aware of what you can see. That's what I think. -40 and -40 are equal, says Anne H. I'm not quite sure how that works. But anyway, Anyway, there we go. I will catch up with you. There's the Vogue show later on. I'll catch up with you later. Thank you very much for watching. It's been fascinating, and looking forward to. I don't know. He does say he's written some other books, but it's so beautifully done. Anyway, we're on to a winner, I think, with that one. Aren't we lucky? Until next time, thanks for watching. I'll catch up with you tomorrow, and we'll get into March. Ed says, I believe we've lost a lot because everything is becoming simpler. Crops, accents, livestock, all monoculture. Absolutely, yes, definitely. And we don't notice it. We haven't noticed it. I mean, you know, some of us noticing it, but most people, not only do they not notice it, but they don't even care. They don't even think about it. And books like this, you know, who and where else is anybody reading books like this any day now? You know, I bet you nobody. I bet you could probably count on a hand or two, or certainly, you know, across England, in the last year, how many people read a Tickner Edwards books. I bet it would be very, very few. We're colder, but also one of the warmer provinces. Oh, where you are, Cooper 68. Right, yeah. Anyway, everyone's saying goodbye, so I should better go. Nice to see you. Take care and toodle pip.